we can't figure out how to talk during the show. I'm pretty sure. It's just like during the start cycle. I think we did so many without talking that it's hard to just create a conversation. I think that while we're waiting for but I'm creating the conversation right now. For all of you watching YouTube, this is all a show for you. I mean, talking and just filling the space. It's what we call in the business stretching. This little you go like this.
Hey,
Little stretch.
so Alex, speaking of stretching, I'm curious if anyone's excited to get the AirPods Pro Max, the new fancy ones that are
Oh yeah,
$550.
I'm there. That's all I got to say. I got a weird coupon for like $500 from something I bought. So I admit that I have a bit of a free $500 sitting around that I didn't
Ooh,
expect. So I was like, it's almost
ooh.
exactly the same. And my mom sent me some money for my birthday that I haven't spent yet. So it's a mixture of my mom's birthday money and a random like bank error in your favor. So I will be getting it. George, we're gonna move into the start cycle here. All right. Hey, everybody. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see a little link down below. You can actually join Zoom. You can register there and become part of this conversation. If you are here and you're watching the fine panelists that have all joined us here and you're wondering, how could I be part of this? Well, all you got to do is be here early. We do mic checks between 6:40 and 6:43. Once we start doing the mic checks, it's over. Like we're not going to bring anybody else into the panel. So you definitely need to be here. I would really recommend being here by 6:40 if you'd like to be on the panel, and we would love to have you on the panel. If you think that you've been working in this industry right now, we represent hundreds of years of experience in this group. We're shooting for a millennium. We're trying to get to a point where every morning we have a millennia of experience, and I think we're closing in on that goal. And so if you think you could add to that, we'd love to have you. Just get here early enough. You're more than welcome to come and check your setup between 6 and 6:30. If you jump in, raise your hand. We'll take a look at. Raise your digital hand. We'll take a look at your setup and give you any pointers if you feel nervous about doing that. Now we do start at 5 a.m. There 5. You don't have to be here by then, but a couple of us start getting together and kind of very loosely talking at 5, and then at 6 we start kind of the webinars. Then at 7 we have general Q&A. That's for any question you have around virtual production or real production or production. So all those things are fair game. Go ahead and put them in Makana. You'll see a link if you're here. We don't read the chat in Zoom. We just put links in to get to Makana, which is where we do all the chatting and asking of questions. So get those questions in. Our show depends on it. Now, this is a show driven by questions only. These aren't pre-seeded questions. These aren't things we thought about yesterday. We didn't think about any of these yesterday. We don't know what we're going to talk about today. That's the kind of the fun of this whole project. So ask those questions and try to think of questions in between now and the next show that you hear. Write them down somewhere so that you can bring them up and we can learn from the discussion. So if you want to share this, you can, but just make sure to use this link that I'm going to post in here. Don't use your own link or you'll come in twice as yourself. Some other people will come in as you. So use the link that I just put in there. And today our second hour is going to be a special guest. So we've got some folks from Simon Says, and they're going to be, I couldn't tell you before because the announcement was embargoed until yesterday. But this is a tool that lets you basically do a paper edit that flows into Premiere or Final Cut. So they're going to talk more about that and answer your questions a little bit later. So that's our second hour. If you want to go see it, I think that Jeffrey posted it into Makana, and you can go look at it and then come back with questions. And if you have questions, just say Simon Says : and then ask those, and we'll answer them in the second hour. All right, Bill, we've got some questions roaming around for us.
We do, in fact, and the first one comes from Jonas Dotel, who's often a questioner here in the panel, from Reutlingen, the German Federated Republic, or what is it now? I guess it's the Federated Republic of Germany. With YouTube now doing live HDR, do you think they'll also add Dolby Atmos or some form of surround audio?
I think they do ambisonic right now. Is that right? I believe that YouTube already supports ambisonic, so there is some version of surround at the moment. What they announced yesterday was the inclusion of essentially PQ and HLG, which is the PQ is basically HDR10. as well as HLG. So you have two options. I think it's unlikely that YouTube will pick up Vision and Atmos. I think it's unfortunate for them. I think that if they want to be on the foreground, the top technology, but YouTube has scale. They don't necessarily need to have the best of everything. But the solutions are pretty good. What it does tell us, I think overall as producers, is that HDR is a real thing, and that we need to pay a lot more attention to how to produce it. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
And it's HDR for live streams. YouTube's already been doing HDR10 for pre-recorded content that was uploaded.
That's correct. So, and there's a handful of software and hardware encoders that can do that. So, it's mostly, you need a 10-bit ingest, HEVC 10-bit ingest into YouTube. It also, you need to be capable of. I haven't done it. Test with the current version, but you do need to use HLS, encoding to get it up there as well. So, and so there's a couple little bits and pieces. It's not going to be something that everyone jumps on immediately, but it is something we're going to talk about a lot. Even though most of my work is in Vision and Atmos, I'm going to be making sure that I understand how to get it into these, and so we'll probably have some more discussions about that as we go forward. But again, the thing to know is so that now we're going to talk about HDR in live. And all the fun that goes along with that. But it's definitely worth tracking, and we as a group will track it a lot more and do a lot more testing as we move forward. We could actually stream this in HDR if we wanted to. It's just a matter of having the conversions live. So we take zooms and bump them to HDR, in FSHDRs. So it's definitely possible. It's not as good as the real thing, but it's not bad either. Anyway, next question.
Moving on to Charles Klein of New York City. Alex and panel, what's your $1,000 US kit these days? Camera, 2 lights, and so forth, helping colleagues build some kits.
If I'm going to send out a remote kit, go ahead, Guy.
I'd probably just use what I'm using right now, Panasonic G100 with the lens is like $700. So that's the camera. So 800 would bring us to one of these little riser capture USB devices to bring HDMI to USB. That's 800, $100 ring light, which I'm using. Then the Polson with the Tech Rise and a clamp to clamp the light or some kind of stand. That's 1,000 even.
I think I would probably, when I send out kits for remotes, I want control of that camera. So I think that's the thought process, and which tends to be why I lean towards so many Brios. So my approach would probably be a Brio. So we're all going to have different opinions about what's important to us as far as that goes. I'm not going to have the same short depth of field that Guy has. So if you want that, then you need to think of a larger sensor. The Brio lets me reframe it and looks pretty good. What we're building into our kits right now are the Nanlite 68Bs. These are reasonably good sized. They're easy to set up. They're light, but they're big enough. The two of them do a pretty good job. They are, and I don't know what the exact price is, but they're like, I think $150 each or something in that range. And then some stands will come with that in the case. I'm with Guy as far as inexpensive mics that work reasonably well. I think the Paulson is probably a good mic to sort out with that, and that's only going to cost you $30 with the converter. so it's a pretty good deal there. I think that I'm still well under $1,000 in that kit. Of course, an earpiece. I will say we got these autos that we've been sending out. I feel like these autos are they changed the amplifier in them, and they're not as powerful as they used to be. So we are using them right now, but we're moving towards the audio implements, which is the one I have here, which will cost another $100, $120 to buy all the pieces. The amplifier is louder, and so as an in-ear piece, and then you'll need a 3-foot extension to get them comfortably into your computer. And it's worth it to have someone have kind of a low-profile earpiece so that you can have echo-free and also echo cancellation-free conversations as you go through that process. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, Alex, quick question. So I got the Pulson, but I got the wrong one. So if I wanted to go XLR in or even USB in, like, how do you do that? Do you need to get a converter or what?
Yeah, you need something that'll convert that. Although I just had it. I thought I put it down here. I'm about to start testing one that I saw on Amazon while I was searching for something else. Of course, this is how I spend money. Oh, this looks like it might be cool. It was like $20, but it's a USB on one. It's a cable that's a USB on one side and a XLR on the other. And I thought, if this works, this is going to be quite nice. So I'm about to experiment with it. Go ahead, Jeff, and then Neil.
Mike, you can always cut the end off of that and solder on a regular TS 3.5. Okay, someone can. Find someone you know, Mike, solders and will help you out.
There is a second hour that someone should put into the second hour list while I'm looking at it of soldering. I think we need to have it because a lot of us do like to solder, and it's worth it. It's a skill worth having. I think people said all kids should code. I think they should all learn how to solder. Anyway, Neil and then Stuart.
Yeah, I just have the simple MXL USB. It's this big hardware thing, but Alex, those cables, I know what you're talking about. I ordered them. They're by this one company, and even though there's like 2 or 3 different brands, I ordered 2 different brands. They all come with the exact same packaging and same insert within that package. My experience, they've worked really well. I was using them to get audio out of a Zoom recorder and into a PC to use that as like a separate audio source for like a USB mic.
Yeah, I have some concerns about it, but I have some concerns about it because of course we talk a lot about preamps, and those aren't going to be very good. But I think that we're, as a stopgap measure, and for people who are looking to how to figure it out, because one of the problems that we have is there aren't that many choices of 1/8" jacks that are non-Sennheiser available, and we keep, as a group, I think we keep buying them out globally, so it becomes a complicated process. Stuart, and then Courtney.
I'm going to put rant mode on for like 2 seconds. SOLDER. Solder. Soldering is what people who do lawn care do. Solder.
This is how we say it in America.
Qualifications are in it.
This is how we say it in America. Solder. So we're just more efficient. We're just more efficient. Courtney.
Yeah, well, one question on that cable you said you ordered. Does it provide any kind of phantom power? Is it designed for mic level or line level in?
I have no idea. I just got it. It was like $15, and I figured, I'll give it a shot.
Neil, the one you got, did it have mic level?
It doesn't say whether it's designed for phantom or not. I don't know if I'd want to push phantom power through it, and the reason is that it actually has on the tip of it the USB part. It's a fat connector because it has electronics built directly into that thing.
That's where the board.
If you were to, that's where the board converts it. So I haven't really tested it in a whole bunch of different environments. I just needed something that would get XLR line out to a computer to basically just push the audio source.
Line level in, not mic level in. Yeah.
Right, line level in, not mic level.
By the way, the Brio is in stock on Amazon right now.
Jeff, and then we'll move on.
The Amazon for one of those specifically says no phantom power.
Yeah, there you go. There you have it. Next question.
Next is Nick Tucker of Terre Haute, Indiana. I'd like to be able to use the back camera on my iPhone 12 Pro as a 4K camera input for Zoom meetings. How should I connect my iPhone 12 Pro to my MacBook Pro 13-inch in order to select it as the video input? Thanks in advance.
Is our current favorite camo? Is that that will do wired or wireless, right? Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I've used camo on this panel a few times, and I love it. It is a hard wire, though. It's lightning coming out of your phone and then USB into the computer. And Guy actually turned me onto it. Great suggestion. Love that app.
Yep. So I think that's the one we're using right now. Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Chris.
There's also an app called Epoch Cam, which you can use. I've tried it a couple times. Not as great but it's an alternative.
Yeah, and I know that Beju, I think, had moved from Epoch to Camo, I think, and he's not on our panel today, but he's an oftentimes contributor. Go ahead, Chris.
Did Mike say that the connection was a USB connection to the computer from the iPhone?
Lightning to USB.
Okay, so you don't have to do HDMI.
Standard.
Okay.
Right. Yep,
it converts it in the phone and then,
streams it out of the phone. Yep, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Next question.
Moving on to Chris Comfort of New York, who was just speaking to us. A friend just got awarded, quotes, a government contract to digitize old media, audio cassettes, reel-to-reels, VHS tapes, and films, 16 millimeter, I believe. They'll have 2 Windows PCs and already own a Zoom H4n Pro. He's getting a VCR. I suggested a Blackmagic Design Intensity 4K card. Any other suggestions?
Good, Guy and then Stuart. A lot of suggestions. Guy, Stuart, Jeff, and Bill.
Yeah, I embarked on one of these journeys earlier before the pandemic, and it involves a lot. You know, like I was taking some standard definition tapes, passing them through a decimator to do some conversions. You might want to actually look at, if you're going to be doing a ton of this stuff, getting one of the Blackmagic Teranexes or an AJ FS1. And these will allow you to do nice deinterlacing, proc amp, cadence, detection and removal. So there's lots of things to make the video look better than, well, the best that it possibly can. So if you're doing a lot of this, I would also recommend doing what I did, which is get this big bad boy, which is the 8K, the 8K deck, which then you can FTP. You can hook up an external drive. Like I hooked up a 32 terabyte drive, and I just started going to town and converting everything onto one big external drive. And then you can FTP and pick it up. So it's a 10 gig Ethernet connection out the back. Once you're going, you can just jam. So if you're doing a year's worth of work, this is what I've put together, and maybe somebody else has a better idea.
Go ahead, Stuart, and then Jeff, and then Bill.
Getting a VCR. I would suggest waiting until you receive the media to make sure you get the right VCR, because you've not said if it's VHS, if it's Umatic, if it's 2-inch tape. The other thing is, if it's broadcast formats, expect it to be a BNC connector on the back of the VCR. Now, when you have a quick look at Blackmagic's sale pages for the Intensity 4K, yeah, great value. But the breakout box cable is not included. It's a separate purchase. It is on the Adorama store. I just checked to look it up. If you want an alternative to that, and you're willing to buy hardware that matches the age of the VCRs, the AJA Kona 3 with its analog breakout box, they're a pretty good bargain on eBay at the moment. I've been looking at them myself.
Jeff?
I have one word, which is outsource. There's companies that do this that have the decks ready. As you look at reel-to-reels, especially certain formulations have a thing called shedding, and they actually need to be baked in a convection oven for 8 hours to get the glue to reactivate so that the oxide doesn't come off of those reel-to-reels. All of the splices that are in those reel-to-reels will have dried out and they will come apart, so they'll have to get put back together. I will put a company that I've used in Mukana, and you just send them your tapes and they send you the digital files.
Yep. And the only challenge will be in government ones is whether you can outsource it. You know, like
that's my concern. It is definitely a government agency, and he had to get security clearance just to have the meeting.
Then,
so
yeah, you won't be able to send those out.
I thought about that.
That's part of why they're awarding it to somebody is because you have to be able to do it all in house. And if you're lucky, you don't have to do it in a skiff. Go ahead, Bill.
And Jeff just went through some of the audio particulars that are very important to get it right. I'm going to try to attack a couple of the little video ones. Particularly, you said VHS tapes, and there's a couple of weird things. First of all, just getting a VCR, you're going to clog up that thing so fast by running old VHS tapes through it. Also, the signal will be not very stable coming off. There's a device called a time-based corrector, which can help remove some of those anomalies. The other thing you commonly run into with VHS tapes, so people have stored them horizontally rather than standing up, and one edge of the tape will curl a little, so there's a characteristic, the bottom like dozen of scan lines are all messed up, so you need some sort of a process of maybe cropping those off if you don't want it to look really bad. There's just a whole bunch of those little kind of things when you're dealing with that. Cleaning the heads on a VHS machine is difficult. You can use a tape. They have dry and wet tapes, but also you can take the housing off and go in and do it the traditional way with a foam swab and a cleaner. You'll have to be doing that constantly because these tapes are of an old age and they're going to shed stuff like crazy.
Stuart?
Yeah, a couple of things I forgot. it's recording video, and you mentioned government and what have you, so make sure you make multiple copies of the files and they're stored safely and securely. But the other thing for Chris to write down for VCRs, Panasonic HS1000. It is an SVHS VCR with the 5-pin control for the deck, so you can get a little jog shuttle controller, which is just out of reach. But they also have the time-based corrector built in and will do skew adjustment to match the tapes. But that's just for VHS, SVHS.
Can you repeat the model number again?
Of those.
What was that model number?
Panasonic
Yep.
HS1000. And I only know this because there's one sitting the other side of the wall from where I'm sitting. And
Good,
it hasn't
Chris.
been used since they did wedding videos in the 90s.
You're good. Chris and then Marty.
Just Guy, what was that 8K deck that you had that you, what was that?
It's the 8K hyper deck, and the unique thing about that one is, well, it does 8K, but I wasn't using it for that at all. The unique thing is that it appears on the network, so you can transfer those files really quick. Otherwise, you're getting into this, thing of capturing to other drives. You can put it in a central location so other people on the network can pick it up.
Guy said that has a TBC or time-based corrector built in, which is a really important thing if you're trying to recreate the decent signal off of an old bad tape.
Good, Marty.
I want to back up what Jeff was saying, because it's really important to have the media evaluated depending on the type of media, the age, the model of tape, and how it was stored. The likelihood of sticky shed syndrome is can be very high. This is something I've done a fair amount of study on personally. If the tape is sticky, then running it through your machine could do permanent damage to the machine, make it extremely difficult to clean, but can also destroy the tape. Currently, the only method that's available to recover tapes from sticky shed is to bake them. And depending on how bad they've been affected, you might only have the opportunity to run these tapes through a machine once before they fall apart. So it's really important to have the media evaluated before you do anything with it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these things, I mean, this is archaeology, and we've done a little bit of work on this in a couple countries. And the one thing to know is that like 8mm is really hard to scan. I know a person that built an 8mm scanner, but if they have 8mm, you're really going to be stuck with telecine. And then 16mm and above, of course, you can scan, which will get you a better solution. But then that also comes down to cleaning and having people that really know what they're doing. And so, and the challenge you'll have with the government contract is, again, every person that touches the media, depending on the agency, will need to have a background check. So you have to think about that. You also, these are just logistical things dealing with government contracts, is that you'll need to build a security protocol. If it's depending on the agency, you'll have to have a reason for, every person has to have a background check. Every person typically will have to, you might have to put in a variety of IT and other pieces. You want to build a safe space. In the most secure things, they call it a skiff, but but you may not have to do that. But that's basically a place where everything stays and all the people that are in it are within the bubble, the security bubble that you've created. So if you have 5 people, they can't bring their friends in. They can't bring their, and I would do that with almost any government agency in general, regardless of their level. It depends on, you have to decide whether they need any kind of classified clearance or not. But even if they don't, dealing with government contracts, especially when it comes to media, you should consider whatever space you're working in is a space that no one else goes in unless they're working on that project until the project's done. You put yourself into all kinds of issues when you don't do that. So there are clean spaces that basically, and we don't even have computers to touch the outside if it's that kind of thing.
I think he has more experience with government contract work than he does with the media stuff. So that's where
should be fine.
It's the media stuff that I'm really,
But the main thing is that for him to understand that the first play, if it doesn't work, could ruin the media. No, I think that's the most thing is you really have to, if you're not going to outsource it, you have to bring specialists in that actually know what they're doing in this area, because you, as both Marty and Jeff have said, you probably only get one chance for a lot of this stuff if it's old. So you just, if it's the last 10 years, maybe not, but over that, you may only get one chance. Next question.
Moving on to Jeff Francis here in the panel in Columbia, South Carolina. And it's about Zoom. Each time I go in and out of breakout rooms, Zoom rearranges my displays. The gallery jumps from internal to external display. Second display jumps to internal display and removes full screen. Is this normal? How do I make Zoom leave my displays as I set them? And I'm going to listen because I can't get mine to work either.
Zoom has a default, and I think it always, anytime you go into something, it's going to want to go back to the default. And I don't think there's any way to save window spaces unless you have a Zoom room. So the Zoom rooms, you can define what you want to happen with each monitor, and as they come out, they'll go into that. You have a set spec, for how it goes. But outside of that, I haven't seen anything that will let you save where the monitors are going. When Zoom opens, I think you're not finding that it's just randomly rearranging it. It's always doing the same thing, which is like, this is where this one goes, and this is where this one goes. Changing your monitor priority will change that too. So if you set your monitors, to the monitor 1, monitor 2 on your computer, it should do the same thing every single time, because it's asking the system to put this window onto monitor 1 and this window onto monitor 2. Go ahead, Jeff. Did that make sense?
I wonder if there's a way to do this where you have everybody not come in with their video just yet, and then when everybody's in, you can say, okay, person 1, turn on your video, person 2, and see if you can organize it that way.
Yeah, but the easier thing would just be to move your movies. Like at that point, asking everybody on the far end to do something just because you want to move your monitors, it'd be easier just to move the monitors at that point. But changing the numbering of your monitors is going to make a difference. Like where you put the system one is going to tell it where to put that piece. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I had a gallery on the internal of a MacBook, and the external was fed into the ATEM to pin people. And so every time I went into the room, it swapped those. So I had to continually drag the gallery back to the internal monitor. So I'll try that, but I don't want the external display to be the primary display with the menus on it, because that
drives me crazy. It's not just that it rearranges that it does the one thing you don't want it to do. Like it's exactly the opposite of what makes the most sense, for us is to have that external display have that. And so, yeah. Courtney?
I was just going to say, on Windows machines, you have a little more control over that, because you can define a primary and a secondary machine, and then,
you can do that on the Mac too. You just drag the title bar over to the other one, but then all your stuff is on this external.
But in Windows 10, you can also tell it which screens you want to have your menus and taskbar on.
Right. And again, with the Mac, if you drag the title bar over, it'll do the same. It'll move all that stuff over, but then you end up with all that control on the the problem is that the sync of what it does is reversed, and the only way we found to fix it is rooms. Next question.
Moving on to Paul King of Northern Virginia. What's the most impressive virtual gathering you've seen pulled off since March?
I was going to say this one. When you think about it, I mean, what we kind of have come up with, I mean, we do it every day, but when you think about the quality of the video, the audio, the commentary, the people that are talking about it, the questions, I think it underlines, I think it just really underlines the power of doing this ongoing. Like every day is insane. That's what we've done, but doing it regularly. We talk to our clients all the time about it. Don't make events. I mean, we do events. That's what we do. That's most of my business is doing events. But I'll tell them, if anyone ever asks me, I'll always say that you should do regular interactions with your audience. And I think that you build a culture, you build a process, I think what we're doing here is the future of what you could do. I don't know if anyone has any different opinions or anything else that they saw that was particularly. I've seen a lot of stuff, and I've worked on a lot of stuff that I think was, wow, that was really good. That turned out well. But nothing that I would say is stunning. Go ahead, Courtney.
If you want to look at something, I was just tuning across YouTube, and Josh Gad does these virtual get-togethers of actors and directors and so on from old movies. So pretty high-profile actors, and he did one on Wayne's World, was just released, and so he's got Aerosmith and Mike Myers, all the stars, Dana Carvey, and it sounds awful.
Yeah,
and he's got Apple, he's got the
yeah.
AirPods in his ear that it sounds like he's using for a microphone. And it's like, how can they produce something of this level? And I'm sure it gets a lot of hits.
It's really painful.
And it is absolutely. He even had to put up, little disclaimers on the screen. Somebody's microphone sounds like it's underwater. Yeah, it's you.
Well, the crazy thing is that when we as a group know that for $30 you could fix that, $30 you could fix it, and you have all these big actors coming in, $30 per actor, whatever. If you're going to have these actors and folks come in, just send them the mic. Just send them all a mic, put this on,
Well,
and
it's obviously produced because he brings people in. So he's either bringing them in from room, somebody's coordinating it, but nobody's paying attention to the audio at all.
I think, yeah. And I think the thing that we see in a lot of virtual events is people just aren't doing good, basic ball skills. Basic ball handling skills is kind of the, an audio connection being the one, and then audio being second. I'm always kind of amazed that we don't have better solution there. And it's mostly because people who create the content aren't sensitive to it. They don't get how important it is. And so they just, it's all about the content. It's all about the discussion. Yeah, it's nice if we can hear it. Next question.
Moving to James Babbitt from here in San Diego. What's the current recommendation for a low-cost mic and interface, speaking of that, to improve audio quality on Zoom? Is the Pyle mic built well enough to last with daily use?
Who cares? I'm sorry. Like think about who cares how long it lasts? As long as it lasts longer than the number of coffees you would have bought at Starbucks. It's
$9.
It's $9. It's like two macchiatos. And so so it definitely lasts that long. Our Pyles, we have a lot of our Pyles running now, 8 months since we got them, or 6 months since we started getting into them. So I mean, they're at 6 months, the ROI is, or the amortization is amazing. So I think that I don't think we want to worry about. When we send out the Pyles, we've had a couple failures on the Pyles. We just send them 2. It's just like here, have 2 of these, and so that way if one breaks, you have another one there, and if it doesn't last for a while, you can use another one. And I know that's we can talk about the morality of a disposable society, but right now there's no in between mics, that really make it work. And so for the most part, we found the Pyles will eventually die if they're not treated well. I keep mine in a case with some other stuff in it, so it's lasted since we got it. But I think Shannon uses hers just about every day, and she doesn't have any issues. So, and it does make a huge difference. The Pyle and the Pulson. Go ahead, Guy.
I'm going to go ahead and push back a little bit, just because I'm going to say, what does failure cost if you blow something up on a live over $10? Or actually, in this case, I'd say for James, I know he's reached out to me in the Discord, and I've said, hey, it's comfort, it's the adjustability. If you're using this stuff all the time, you don't want to be picking at this stuff and adjusting and messing with it, and then you get that clarity. I mean, there's a tonality that you get out of a good mic. So right now you're listening to the DPA 4066. It's an excellent mic. I'm using it every day. It's worth it to me to pay the extra money. So my thing is don't buy twice. Buy once and be happy with it and be solid.
So I agree with you in that sense. It's because he asked for a low cost mic. If he said, what is the current recommendation for a mic, an interface, I would say my current recommendation for a mic, what I use, what I send out is a Countryman H6 with Mix Pre 3 and with noise assist installed. That's what I send out. That's what I use. But that's a $1,500 solution. So what I'd say is, if you ask me for a low cost mic, I would say that is, I actually think that the Pyles and the Pulson sound better than the Samsung, which is 10 times more, or 8 to 10 times more. I think that the Samsung has a lot of line noise. Go ahead, Stuart.
Okay, what about low-cost solution for people who don't like wearing the boom mics? Because there are a lot of people who just refuse to wear them. I mean, I love my little J-Car mic, and I know it's a reasonable price, but what would suit for people around places where you can't order from J-Car?
Jeffrey?
If we're not talking headset microphones, then there's a company out there called Fifine, Fifine. A lot of live streamers are using them. They have podium versions. They have little tabletop versions that you can use, and that'll help with some of the sound wrangling. As you can see, I'm not using my headset mic because Mickey likes the Movo, and so I'm using that. So there are other options if you want to get close to a microphone rather than wear it.
Yep. Nikki, did you have your hand up? No.
Yeah, like for if you're not going with a headset, an SM58 with a decent interface, SM58 will last your lifetime. So you can drop it down a staircase and it'll still work most likely.
And I've found with the Pyle PR40, now we're starting to get real money, but I can set it right under the frame if I have a close enough frame, and it sounds just fine. It's SM58 as well. You just can't get that much further away. And the reason we don't send out those kinds of mics to, so there's a reason that we don't. I'm so fixated on headset mics, and that is number one is I'm sending them out to consumers that don't know anything about this. I can't guarantee that they're going to stay close to the mic. And if I give them something that will let them back away, it's going to pick up their whole room. So mine is a very, very technical, like the headset mic means that they can be talking and doing all this stuff and they don't, we get the same consistent audio and they don't have to know anything about mics. If you're a mic person, I jump on a bunch of like Leo shows with my SM50 or with my Pyle right below the frame. And I have a clean frame, but I know that I can't move my head. Like I know that I can't move around, or if I need to move my head, I can move back. So as a radio person, I understand what to do. What I'm always considering is what am I going to do when I'm sending it out to someone who's never really paid attention to a mic. Go ahead, Paul, and then we'll move on.
Yeah. What? Excuse me. What is the most forgiving mic? Say if I wanted to move around and have a mic that would be the most forgiving.
The problem is that when it's forgiving, it's
around. What would that be?
The problem is that when it's forgiving to everything, including all of the background noise in your room, all the room, so I hate like really, you can turn it, take an SM58 and turn it up. It'll pick up a lot of stuff, but it's going to pick up a lot of things. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, essentially, Paul, the question that you're asking is, which is the microphone that defies physics?
And there are, in fairness, there are
but yeah.
Yeah, there are mic arrays that can take advantage of some of those things, but as they do that, they take away quality from your. I don't think that you're buying anything with that. I think that when it all that mic filtering and all that echo cancellation and all the other things that happen there start to drop the quality away, and that's the issue. Go ahead, and we'll move on after these ones. It'll be Marty, Jeff, and Neil.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that there are some mic arrays. Now you're talking about some money at this point.
Right, that's the whole issue. We're talking about cheap. Right. When we talk about not cheap, but low cost mics, you're not going to get into any of these for less than $50.
That's correct.
Or less than 500 typically.
Yeah, the notion of low cost mics for streaming applications, I think is fine. But when you're streaming for broadcast purposes, I agree that it's worth it to spend the money on a better microphone. Not only will you get a better capsule, cleaner sound, wider bandwidth, better balance, but you'll also get the physics, the physical aspect, and the fact that it will stay in shape longer. It will be more durable.
Yep.
I think it's worth it to spend the money if you're doing broadcast. If you're just doing like office streaming and stuff, I think the low cost.
Here's the thing: is that the $10 Pyle mic, the $10 Pyle mic, or $15 Pyle mic and $10 Pulson would make your audio sound better than 90% of the broadcasters right now who are doing it from home because broadcasters are lazy. I mean, at first I thought that they were just surprised, but I am just stunned by what they're willing to put on air at this point. And I think it's the end of broadcast because they've been brought down to where we're at. We're now seeing a bunch of other content that sounds at least and looks at least as good as what they're doing. And I think that they've shot themselves in the foot because I just don't watch broadcast anymore. Like I can't watch it. It makes me so upset. Like I haven't watched broadcast for months. And now I filled it in with a bunch of other things and now I'm not coming back. Jeff. And then like just the echo at NPR, because they're shooting from their homes with those Neumanns. There's this room echo in the NPR broadcast that I can't listen to. And I used to listen to NPR every day, and it just makes me crazy to listen to it. And I'm like, dudes, you have been there for how long? Like, all you need is a sound booth in each one. How much are you paying these hosts? You can just put a sound booth in their house, like call it a day. Anyway, Jeff and then Neil.
Yeah, if you want to not have a headset mic, you want the mic to be away from you. If you're going to move a foot, that mic needs to be several feet away from you, or the inverse square law is just going to cause such big gain changes.
Yep.
A decent mic is the one I think Paul's using, the new Shure MV7. I think it's like 250, but it's an XLR and a USB, so it kind of takes your USB interface and puts it as part of the mic. So that's a not a low cost, but a lower cost microphone if you don't want the headset option.
Yep, go ahead, Neil. And then that's it. We'll move on.
No need. We can move on.
Okay, next question.
Okay, this is the second one that James Babbitt had in a row, and then we got a couple from Jonas. But James says, is there a hardware recorder that would replace the Sound Devices Pix250i? What software is needed to record a screen capture with an external recorder?
You don't need any software to record a screen capture with an external recorder because it's just HDMI out. But go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I miss the Pix line, but right now I think in terms of the same form factor, people have moved over to the Key Pros, which I think Alex isn't that fond of.
No. I mean, for the price too. I mean, I think that there's a lot of things that you can record to externally. Almost anything that takes an HDMI in. The big trick is, will it see a Mac or PC output? Will it handle 30p? The Pixes happen to do that really well. So even like a little camera assist that Blackmagic makes will record a screen. As long as your computer can send it something it can see, you might need to put a decimator in the middle. Go ahead, Nikki.
Yeah, in terms of the monitor / recorder combo devices, Alex mentioned the Blackmagic assists that also could record, but for those I would lean to Atomos for those.
Yeah, and then you can also use like a HyperDeck Mini. Is something that you can record to as well. So HyperDeck Minis. You may, when they update that line eventually and put Teranex on the front on the inputs, which they seem to be doing with everything. I have a feeling that then that's the perfect little box to do it in. Next question.
Moving on to Jonas Totel's first question. Second question today. Is there a software to stream from A Ultrasudio micro recorder to YouTube with HDR? OBS said it will take time for them, and they don't have an estimated time of arrival yet.
Yeah, you shouldn't need to stream. It's not this. I think Wirecast is the only software streaming that is like general software that says they can do HDR. We haven't tested that yet. So I think that's the only one right now that is part of the initial grouping. So next question. Go ahead, Mickey, before we jump on.
Yeah, I was just looking at the white papers from YouTube, and a software encoder that they recommend for HDR is called Mirillus Action. It's called Action by a company called Mirillus. And apparently can do HDR.
And then there's lots of hardware encoders that can do it. So we'll talk more about those. There's some more coming out next year that'll be useful. Next question.
Jonas is back with an OBS version for Zixi. Would it be a better workflow to go with Zixi to AWS and then from there to a different RTMP provider?
Getting Zixi out. I mean, it's if you have any concerns about your internet, using Zixi to get to wrap and get out to AWS is a great idea. It scales up and down well, and it is probably the most stable thing to get bits from one place to the other. Once you're in AWS, you're talking to other AWS servers. You're pretty safe. But I would always recommend Zixi if you can use it. It's worth it. Next question.
Moving to Jake Hamilton of North Hollywood, who asks, could the panel please share your thoughts regarding the most effective approach to finding the clients who really need you, being a niche specialist, versus a soup to nuts, jack of all trades type practice? How do you weigh the pros and cons, creative editor versus post-production services type thing?
Anyone have any strong opinions? Go ahead, Neil.
Yeah. I've actually been kind of in this transition of.
You're a little low,
wanting
Neil.
to
I don't know if
step
you can lean forward a little bit. You're just, yeah.
Yep, I can definitely lean forward. How's that? Sorry about that.
Better, yep.
Okay. So, yeah, I've kind of been in this transition of wanting to step away from being an on-set tech to wanting to try and produce things from a technical side. I've been doing tech for 10 years. I've got about 15,000 hours doing that. And I thought that it would be a good idea to try and just rush whatever project I can find and try and get producer credits. And what I'm finding is a lot of the ones that I'm able to get picked up on pretty quick are pretty much no budget solutions, where I'm asked to provide solutions for things where you have no budget. And I'm going back and forth between how much do I want to slam my head against the wall trying to figure out things that there's no money to throw anything at, versus trying to actually work with people, build relationships, network, and talk with people to figure out what fits for me and what fits for them. And if it's not a good fit for both of us, move on and try and find the next one. It's more of a, I think that answer is more of a very individualized answer in terms of what fits you the best and also what fits the client that you want to work with.
Bill?
Sorry if that's a long answer.
Bill, and then George, but keep it pretty quick because we've still got a couple questions before the top of the hour.
I think it starts with, and this was actually the topic that I did at the Creative Summit just recently, and it's, if you don't know where you're going, you will wander and the market will determine what you're going to do. Until you sit down and make that decision, I really am passionate about subject A, and I would really love it if I could work for the rest of my career in subject A. This disruption is an opportunity for people who think like that to move themselves, because there's been so much change out there. The agencies that I used to work for and the corporations that I used to work for are now all distributed out to work from home. They do not have the same relationships always that they had before. Maybe they're struggling with budgets and their it's just changed. So now's the time.
Yeah, George.
So the big advantage right now for us is clients right now that we're bidding on, they want you to be able to produce videos for the award ceremony. They want you to produce the AV side of the show also. So it's a big advantage right now for editors and folks that are creating AV. So that's my little answer to that.
Yeah. And the way I think about I've talked about this in the past, but the way I think about my business or what I'm doing is I always have something that's paying the bills that I focus on doing really well. Like how, I pay attention to lots of weird little details and just try to crush it. There's usually a part of my business that I'm trying to get rid of, but that used to be the thing that I was crushing. So as this moved in, I moved that out and I'm trying to do less and less of that. And then there's usually almost always something in the front that I'm trying to, and I don't care how much it makes and I don't care what it does. And I'm constantly experimenting. Anytime you give me free time, I'm working on that. And then eventually that one will move in like a tank track and become the thing that I'm making money at. And then I start working on the next thing that I want to do. This is like 10% and 15% of my time. This is like 60, 70% of my time. And this is, it's still bringing in money, but it's something I'm trying to kind of move up. And I've done that for 30 years. It just kind of move. And it's like a big tank that just kind of moves along and it's very slow. It doesn't, there's no pivots. There's no whatever. It just kind of cranks along. But I have an idea of what I'm trying to put together. But back to the point, you really have to have a place that you're trying to get to, and you're trying to fulfill. And you may not be pointed at it all the time, but you'll be pointed, and you're constantly trying to find your way to that direction. Next question.
James Babbitt is back from San Diego with another one. What's your impression of the Apple AirPods Max Pro headphones? I think
they're going to be a failure. I don't think anyone's going to buy them. They're only sold out until March or something. So it's like, that's like saying no one's going to go to that restaurant anymore because it's too full. George?
I'm an Apple fan, man. So on the other side of that, if you want to follow the technology and see where Apple is going, I've already ordered one because I know they're going to be able to produce audios for the living room at some point in the future. So it's all about following the tech and being able to embrace it.
Yeah. For me, because I'm doing a lot of surround and I'm doing a lot of things that are related to the AirPod Pros, I need to have everything that can do anything that remotely sounds like it'll do spatial audio. I'm going to get. So for me, it's just business. Bill, real quick, and then we move on.
This will be real quick. I keep getting these technologies where until I've tried it, I don't have an opinion of it, because if you haven't experienced it, you don't know if it's significantly better than what came before. So I just stop pontificating about stuff I've never tried.
Go ahead, Mike.
So the beauty of Apple products right now is because at the holidays, you can pretty much buy anything you want, and they extended their return policy to, I think, like January 15th or 16th. So it's a good time to buy something
now
to
by
kick
then.
the tires. I know.
Get one by then.
I saw that last night. Yes.
Yep. I think that it's a big part of Apple's play. I think this is the first headset that kind of takes what Beats was thinking about and then put Apple stuff on it. Next question.
Can't believe I took pundit and pontificating and mashed them up. That was weird.
There you go.
George Kennedy of Washington says, Alex, what's the difference in VPN use, consumer VPN, Norton Express versus hardware VPNs?
There's also software VPNs in between that, but the main thing is the question is whether you're doing a VPN to hide your location so that you can subscribe to, NFL Ticket or YouTube or whatever, YouTube TV or whatever, or you're trying to actually protect your connection back to your corporate environment or master control. So the VPNs that we use we're trying to protect all the data, and mostly we're not even trying to protect the data. We're really just trying to manage our IPs. So that we can, know where all of our devices are. That's the number one reason we're using the VPNs. You could do port forwarding too, but the general consumer ones are really more designed around downloading stuff that they don't want that they're trying to regionalize. Go ahead, George.
I'm going to keep it quick. So, office hours, education-wise has been great. The AWS exploration is like massive. So I've been able to spin up a open VPN connection between my Amazon machines that I now have and my location here, like Alex said, is protecting your data. So with the help of Tucker and Jeff, I've been able to establish that right now. And it's just a joy really for office hours and being able to spin up your own VPN. It requires a little bit of Windows knowledge, which I don't have, but I have now. But it's definitely a joy to be able to do these things now.
Absolutely. Next question.
And I think it's the last one before we get to.
I think we got two.
Two. Oh, that one came in there. Okay. Mark Harder in Brooklyn says, when using a Zoom room per person to get dedicated video feeds from remote speakers and leaving them alone in that room to keep the resolution, how do you then connect that room with the rest of your speakers? Or are the rooms automatically connected to a main call?
They're not connected to a main call. They're connected to each other in hardware when we do it. So they're all getting a multi-view back. So a Blackmagic MV16 that'll give them either 4, 9, or 16 returns. And then we can decide what we want to send back to them. But they see each other, and then we do mix minuses through either a QL1 or CL5 or other things like that. There's that, and Brian has done many of these things. So but there's a mix minus for everybody. That's going back to them, as well as comms, which we insert into that mix minus return, and then they get video back, so they can hear and see each other as needed, and so they don't feel alone in there. It's just that their connections we're just managing each connection individually. Last question.
And it comes from Paul Wallace, who wants Neil Goldstein here in the panel to demo that awesome backpack that he built with all the audio gear.
I think we lost Neil.
Did we? Then we can't do that.
Our timing was imperfect. So we'll have to, Paul, if you see Neil there again, ask him, or even ask him. He was here early, I think. So
yeah, bring your
go
backpack
ahead and ask him.
back.
Yeah. There's a song about that, right? Oh, you're never going to get your backpack back. Don't expect to get your backpack back.
Country song, like definitely.
That. Yeah. No, it's not a country song. I think it's a pop song. Yeah, exactly. Oh. Anyway, all right. Let's bring in Shamir here. Let's see.
Mike's here already. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Muted, I think.
Yeah, that's what
I was typing and Alex shut me down.
We're going to start a little, just a touch early, because I expected that last question to last longer, and then Neil wasn't. I was like, we got to rush to the last question because Neil will be able to answer it over 2 minutes, and then he was gone. So anyway, we're shifting gears a little bit. I know that I was a little bit cagey about when I sent out the agenda earlier this week about what we were going to talk about, we just were embargoed to not talk about it until Tuesday. So anyway, what Mike and Shamir are from Simon Says, or Mike. Everybody does a lot of things. I've done a lot of different things with Mike and Shamir, but Mike and Shamir are from SimonSays.ai, and I have been using Simon Says for years at this point. It is. And basically, I'll let these guys describe it. But when I found out what they were announcing, I thought that, there might be a lot of people in our little group that could be really interested in knowing about what you guys are working on. So what we're going to do is we'll have Mike and Shamir give us a little overview of Simon Says, and then talk a little about the new product, and then we'll open it up for questions. So which one of you wants to describe, overall Simon Says?
Shamir, definitely. I'm just a pretty face.
Go ahead, Shamir. Tell us a little bit about the overall plan. Hey.
Absolutely. So what Simon Says originated was to transcribe your interviews, dailies, rushes, and then at the end of the video edit to be able to subtitle and caption it. And we started doing it just in English, and over the years we've added now 100 languages. Kind of the core thinking behind it, it was sort of my background in nonfiction and docs, was if you're on the beginning of posts, the transcription was just a stepping stone. No one really just wanted a transcript. They really wanted to find the meaningful parts of their interview. And so what we've announced yesterday, Simon Says Assemble, where you can now edit video like copying and pasting text. So now that you have the transcript on Simon Says, and each word has a reference point to the video, you just quickly can read the transcript or search it, highlight the sound bites, grab them, and then drag and drop the sound bites to order the spine of your story. It's all web-based. So you can invite your team, you can invite your client to read it, to view it, and the video dynamically creates. And so we're really excited about it because, sort of the tedious process, oftentimes when you're working on a web video, marketing video, on a news piece or doc, is that like kind of back and forth with your team, with your client, and being able to align on that story. Once everyone's aligned on that story and you've got the sign off, then you can export from the web right into your NLE. So we have an export right into Avid Media Composer or Pro Tools, Adobe Premiere Pro, Audition, Final Cut Pro, Adobe, and DaVinci Resolve. And you can go and finish your film. And so now the editor can do what he or she does best, which is focus on the most creative elements, the pacing, the story. Yeah.
No one wants to do that first part. The first part is like, oh my gosh, the assembly. Oh, we're just going to assemble the whole thing together, and then there's all this back and forth. And to give you a sense of how, we've used transcription in the past, just to kind of give an overview of what for people who are looking at it, we would for a long time. For Salesforce primarily, but for a lot of other companies, we would do 10 hours a month of interviews, 10, maybe 15 hours a month of interviews. And then immediately that night, we would send it to production transcripts in LA, and they would send us, we'd pay hundreds of dollars or sometimes thousands of dollars for fast turns. And we would get all the scripts back. Then we would send those to the client. And the client doesn't want to look at the video. They know that it was shot well and it probably sounds good. They're not worried about like, is this the right shot or not? It's an interview. And so they just need to know what they said. Now they may come eventually and find out that their eye line is wrong or whatever, but that's right now they just want to get to that first assembly. So then they go through and they highlight it. So they would in the early days, it was literally, we would get a printout of it with highlighted. Like, I want this, I want this, I want this. We finally moved into the high tech of that they were able to digitally highlight it in Word and send it back to us in a Word document. And so that was like groundbreaking, and so that was the, where we, we would do this. I mean, this was literally for years. It was like this constant churn of all these things. And the thing that Simon Says, really added to our workflow was not having to export a file, not having, you're literally in Final Cut, or whatever app you're in, there's an extension there that manages it, and then you just send it from Final Cut out, and then it would come back with all the, especially after the captions were supported better in Final Cut, it would come back as captions. And the reality is that, and then people could highlight stuff, but the reality is that the captions were actually better than most of the time when we send it out to a real caption, to a transcriber, it comes back 100% on, but then we have to import it back in, and does it import correctly, and does it all work? And so, for us, I think that especially when you're doing, a lot of us right now are doing tons of these interviews and process, getting that down, you're gonna do a whole bunch of interviews remotely, is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, just to chime in, I think one of the things when I was doing some work in reality and in variety, and you get that sheet, Alex, that you were describing, like a spreadsheet with time code dialogue, and all they would do is go pick out the words that they wanted, and it's not necessarily going to be at the right inflection in the sentence, or when something ends, and then you end up with those hideous Frankenbites. And I think having it, right in front of you as you're looking at the words, and you can see the picture, and you can see how the sentence is landing and the words are, it sort of, you almost get to the second cut by the time you're done messing around with it, because you don't have to go back and figure out how to end a sentence with the right tone.
Are you able to show it to us? I don't know I didn't really set you up for that. I don't know if you can do if you want to do screen capture and show something, you're more than welcome to. I'm putting you on the spot. So if you.
Yeah, let me see if I can load it up quickly here.
Yeah, but the real question is, so you're watching, so in this, and I haven't gotten a chance to use it yet. You're able to see the video, right, while you're editing. Is that, Mike?
Exactly.
On the web, yeah. So it's not just changing the text around and it exporting back out. You're on the web, you see the video there, you're able to change the text and watch the result immediately.
Yeah, exactly.
Correct.
It dynamically shows. It dynamically creates. Exactly. Yeah. I don't think I have screen share privileges, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you do now.
Here it is. Yeah.
I think you just did it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shamir, these are some technical people that we've got going on here.
Yeah. So awesome. So you can see the screen here. So imagine the left-hand side is the player. So all your, like Simon Says, transcripts would be here. These are all the projects that you've already interviewed, like you mentioned, the Final Cut Pro extension. So wherever you've imported or ingested from, all that media lives there. Then when you go from the import to the bin, this is where the assembled projects media lives. We've loaded up an interview with Amanda, and now you have all the transcript here, and you can just like jump around, you can search, you can find the key sound bites. And I'll just give you an example here. So say I want that one, you can just add it here, and it just loads here. And this would be your timeline. And so once you have your sound bites, now you can just like grab it, move it around. The video plays. And then it goes to, and then it's going through. Technical bug. That one was skipped very, very quickly. But what it's supposed to do is go into the next soundbite, and you can reorder. And then from here, you can also like invite your team, leave comments. And so you can give different types of privileges from like view, comment, and edit access. Once everyone's aligned on the timeline and on the sound bites and in the right order, then you can hit export and get to your NLE. So that's kind of a very, very quick demo of how that works.
And how does it, and then the NLE, we should assume is reconnecting to the original files.
Yeah.
How does that interaction work?
Well, the interaction is, from a Final Cut Pro standpoint, or almost every type of workflow, you basically have imported clips. And then on our side, once you've created this timeline, we are concocting a sequence XML or timeline, so also known as a timeline, or in Final Cut as a project, XML. And each of these media have a reference point or a file path, and then the start and end time. And so when you hit export and you import into your NLE, it creates that sequence structure, or the timeline structure, and then has a reference point to each clip, and then the specific in and out points.
Right. So the clips originally that went up to Simon Says came out of the clips that were in
Exactly. Yeah, you could use the web as well. Absolutely, you could use the web as well. But in the example you gave, imagine you have a whole bunch of dailies, and you just drag those dailies into the Final Cut, into the Simon Says extension. That's what would be living on the bin side.
And as long as those names, how are those connected? So as long as those names match up, the ones that you dragged into Simon Says, when you open them in your project, you would just relink them, or you would,
yeah.
or does it link automatically?
So each NLE handles it differently. In Final Cut, it has a kind of media ID, a UID. So it preserves that ID to the NLE. So even if you change, for example, the name Amanda.mp4 to something else, it would still have that particular media ID when you go back to Final Cut Pro.
And
now,
that's if you send it out of Final Cut. If you didn't just drag it on, if you drag the raw image files out, it seems like it's harder.
Well, no, it would still, then it does it by file path. So you still have the clip name and the file path on your drive, and that's preserved as well. So as soon as you import back into your computer, now if you are sharing media with another editor, with a teammate, then yes, that person has to, one, have the original media, and then two, just as a quick relink.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Any other features there? So basically the client, what this really leads to is that the client can do you push some of the work off back to the client.
Exactly.
Here, why don't you figure this out? You know,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
This is the part
to answer that, to answer the question, my favorite question, which is that the best take? Or do we have another one of those? I mean, that question is answered because they've looked at it.
Well, so here, that gets back to it. Like, how do you do that? Like, so I've got I guess you can, is there a way to, what if you had like 2 or 3 different takes with Amanda?
Yeah.
Is there a way for you to compare and contrast those, or?
Well, you can play them and then you can compare them, but say the client comes in and they're like, say, actually, this is a sensitive line, and then they can go in and find, where it is in here. So, they can go look at another one, bin this one, find a new one and then put it back there. So that's how you would do it. I mean, it's basically like, now you can read it, but you can also watch at the same time. All this is like clickable, jumping.
And I think, Alex, if there's more than one thing, there's not in Final Cut. There's auditions and there's all this stuff.
Right.
In this instance, I think if you had 2 options of something, you just line them up and play them, and that's the way it has to go because of all of the possible destinations that this is going.
Yep, absolutely. But definitely, I mean, and this gives I think that, to get back to your point, now, how do you, if you want to, are you able to add any kind of little trim elements, like make it a little longer or a little shorter out of that clip, or is that something you just wait for the NLE to do?
Wait for the NLE primarily, but yes, if you want to remove a word, you can do that. Just hit X. There's this X button here, so you can do that. You can trim it, but the primary goal here is to align on the sound bites and then the ordering of those sound bites to create the spine of the story. But you would do the kind of closer cut, the fine cut in your NLE.
No, absolutely. It's fascinating. Yeah. And again, I think that for someone like me who's done so many, of these where, just thousands of hours, you just look at there's so many hours that this would have saved. And so I was really excited to make sure that everyone kind of saw it, because a lot of us have worked through that. Bill, we've got a couple. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for me, the kind of core example in my mind when we were developing this product was, I was thinking about the time that the times that I spent in the kind of greater Middle East doing documentary nonfiction work. And so I was out there, my team was in London. And so, we were doing shoots there. I would have loved to be able to, if the bandwidth supported, be able to, import the media into Simon Says, at least get a proxy up, get it transcribed, get it translated, because I was oftentimes doing interviews in other languages such as Urdu or Arabic, and then be able to translate it. And you could use Simon Says to and then my team could have seen it in London, be able to quickly find the sound bites, be able to order. We could have discussed it. We wouldn't have to be in the same office, and then be able to export. And they could have already started cutting before I even got back to London. Yeah,
absolutely. I think, Bill, we've got a couple questions. If you've got questions about this, about how this works or how it would apply to your workflow, go ahead and start asking them in Mukana.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, the first question comes in from Paul Edison Lamb, and he asks, how does Simon Says compare to other products like Descript?
So I think our kind of core focus is One, it's web-based, it's 100 languages. And what we're really trying to do is solve a particular point in the workflow process, not to eliminate NLEs. We're trying to solve the pain point of how do you bring the story forward? How do you liberate the story from typically what is a siloed workflow on someone's computer in their NLE, and now open up the story creation process to every member of your team, to your client, be able to lock story much earlier, much faster in the post-production process. So that's really the pain point we're solving. And from what I know, no one's doing that, solving that particular problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Bill, I think I can quickly
okay.
talk about, I mean, I've used Descript and I used it for podcasts. I haven't used it for any video. I think it's just kind of a different tool, and it's got different capabilities. You can do some finer waveform editing in Descript. But I think as far as being able to have a number of people looking at things and just putting something together quickly, which is often the goal, the Simon Says Assemble does a really good version of that. And, you know, Descript, in my experience, you can't really have multiple people working on something at the same time. So, but it is great piece of software.
The main premise there is they're saying, hey, learn a new video editing application, get rid of the video application. This is the one. We're saying, no, we want to supplement the tools that you're already using. We're trying to solve a pain point at the beginning of post-production, the story locking process, and then go to the tool, to the video editing applications you're already familiar with, and complete the cut there, bring the story to life there. And be able to cut to music, add sound effects, pacing, B-roll, alternative angles, and export.
And Chris Ward had almost the same question, but added at the end, can you export the transcript after? Wanted to load that part of the workflow.
Export from here? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
From Simon Says, absolutely. Yeah, you can export it to Word, and you get your like the cuts. So like this clip in and out point, the next cut, the next clip in and out points. Absolutely.
Next question.
Cool. Comes from George Kennedy Jr. here on the panel from Washington, D.C. Simon says, what's the workflow for Resolve?
For Resolve, you can, so there's two ways. We have a extension for Resolve, both free and paid versions of Resolve running on Macs. You can import your clips, bring them into Simon Says, transcribe them, bring them into the Assemble, be able to do the assembly edit here with your team, and then export. And Resolve supports a whole bunch of XML types, but we export, if I'm not mistaken, to a FCP XML, if I'm not mistaken, or XML, which imports into Resolve and creates a timeline. So that would be the workflow. So use the extension to ingest clips, transcribe it, cut it in Simon Says Assemble, and then export out click here on Resolve and export out an XML that you bring into Resolve.
I shouldn't do this, but I can't stop myself. You didn't start your answer with Simon Says. Somebody had to do it. Just get it off the table.
Exactly.
Bill, it just the other day, I mean, I've been working with Shamir for, 3 years now on this thing almost. And just when we were talking about the name for this product, I said, we really should call it Simon Says Assemble, and we should change the name of the other thing to Simon Says Transcribe. It's all about the punctuation in the name of the product. And I don't know why we haven't thought of that before.
Next question.
Moving to Alton Christensen of Brooklyn, who says, is there an option to keep track of the running time of an edit as you assemble it this way?
It is. Yeah, there is. Exactly. Yeah. It adds on the timeline side. The screen's not up anymore. I don't think I'm doing screen share, but right below the video on the timeline side, there is the running total of duration.
Next question.
Moving on to Mickey from the Philippines and the panel. Are you thinking of building integration with Frame.io? Tying the two products could be extremely powerful.
Yeah, it's a good question. We haven't gone too deep into that or thinking about that. I think for us, let's just solve this particular problem. Let's get this product out there, see how users are using it. There's already a long list of feature requests in the one day that we've had it. And then we're going to now start thinking about version 2. But yes, I'll add that onto my long list of things for my engineering and product.
Some of those feature requests came from me. Mickey, just a question back to you is, I mean, for the fact that this does video playback, you can leave notes. What would you envision as far as working with Frame.io?
I think well, I haven't tried your product yet, but the commenting system in Frame.io is it's really polished at the moment. But of course, I can't compare when I haven't tried your product yet.
Okay, yeah, I mean that was kind of one thing I really do like about Frame.io is versioning, how it handles the versioning and how you can compare two different versions of something and how they stack up. I think that's really nice too.
I mean, I think that one of the issues that a lot of us have is that we're all using Frame.io, and so the having another app that we go out to. I think what Mickey's kind of pointing to is that in a perfect world, we would have it somehow tightly integrated so that we would be able to upload all of our files to the client. And for us, like for instance, we've gotten into this project that I'm about to go into. We've already talked to the client. All the content's going in Frame.io. Like all the raw clips, everything is going to go up into Frame.io starting next week. And so there's all of these files, terabytes of files that are going up to Frame.io. We would prefer, in a perfect world, to have an extension from Frame.io to Simon Says or some kind of tight integration so that they can just do all the Simon Says stuff inside of Frame.io or something that it ties together so it feels like that. And then we can, and then it's all a unified experience for our client. The client has one project area to go to, and it's seamless. So anyway, I think that's how I imagine it anyway. Mickey, is that about, yeah?
Yeah, it's pretty much it. Because with how teams are working on Frame.io, it's like really, it makes it so much easier, and it's very tightly integrated. So adding sort of a way to make a paper edit on Frame.io without even before initially opening up an NLE might be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Courtney Gooden from the panel usually is Courtney here? I don't know.
He's here. For me, he's right next to you. So I'm like, how did he miss him? He's right next to Bill. Like in my grid, he's like, how did you miss Courtney? Yeah, exactly.
It's late in the show, and I always think, is anybody left yet? Nobody's leaving. Simon Says use AI to do the original transcription from speech to text, or is that done by a human transcriptionist?
Exactly. Yeah. AI.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I will say that it's pretty amazing AI. I mean, the stuff that I've worked on with it, I'm kind of surprised at the quality of it. Yeah, it's good.
I was expecting a much higher error rate than I actually got out of it, and it surprised me as the workflow extension in Final Cut 10.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when we started 4 years ago, I mean, one of the things that we built from the outset was a kind of Google Doc-like tool, so you can make any edits, add speaker names, and when we started 4 years ago, I was like, 80-85% accuracy rate, but over the last number of years, we get feedback like that all the time. That thing that we spent so much time building, the product where you can edit on the web and make corrections, people are using it less and less now.
Well, and one of the things that I've noticed about Simon Says is that the captions that come in are cleaner and better timed than the raw transcripts that we get from human caption. Human transcription is the format of them and how they cut themselves up and how they format themselves. Go into it. At least the Final Cut timeline is really good. There's less cleanup in that way. Next question. I have actually one question around that. Do you have does your system allow for any import of libraries of these are words we don't want you to use, or these are words that we want to guide the AI towards?
The latter, exactly. Yeah. So with Simon Says, you can add a custom dictionary per language. You can add a number of custom dictionaries, but they're associated to a transcription language. You can add formal nouns, names, acronyms, industry jargon specific to whatever you're shooting. And so it will skew the AI when it hears matching phonemes to the words you've added in your custom dictionary.
That's fantastic. Next question.
Shane Foley of Ashland, Oregon is in next with, so is Simon Says importing low-res proxies?
It is.
There you go. Yes. Next question.
Easy.
There may have been more. There may have been more behind that, but yes, it is importing low-res proxies.
Alton Christensen of Brooklyn is up next. We've been using Sonix AI, doing something very similar for a year or more, exporting XML to Premiere and Audition. I built up an extensive dictionary. Can I move that into Simon Says? How does it learn the words separate from any reference audio?
So with our dictionary, you just it's just plain text. So copy and paste plain text, just add your words to that dictionary. And it's very much skewing the AI when it matches those phonemes. So it's not specific to, it's not, you don't get an AI per user. It's a general AI, and the custom dictionaries help customize it to you, to your content, to your specific recordings.
Next question.
Mike Burns here on the panel from Spokane says, is Simon Says capable of searching for actual words spoken in sound bites? If you are from New York City and mumble, what do you say about that? How good is the transcription?
I've seen some pretty, as Alex said, some pretty astonishing things pulled out of Simon Says with heavy accents. That said, there's a limit to that. So I think that the limit coincides exactly with your sense of humor.
Is it programmed for forget about it?
There's the hardware solution, software solution, and then the wetware solution, which is training people to speak with more diction. Next question.
Yeah, it's true.
Moving to Chris Ward in Berlin, who says support for Premiere ?
How does it look in Premiere?
How does it look? Absolutely. So yes, absolutely. You can export from Simon Says Assemble to Premiere. We do now have a Adobe Premiere extension. Yeah, so you can download that from Adobe Exchange. Once it's installed, it's a window in Premiere. You select the clips in your bin, be able to import it, transcribe it. It comes into Simon Says. You start an Assemble project, import that media into your Assemble project, do the cutting, and then you export back a Premiere XML. And then when you import that, it reconnects with the clips in the bin.
Next question.
The next question is, Guy, and I think maybe it's hauled over, who can share the evolution from the olden days of VHS MP3 transcription and paper edits? So no, it is about transcription, but it's about the history of its evolution.
Did you want to say anything else? Go ahead, Mike.
I think Alex, you summed that up pretty well earlier.
I talked about it. I only talked about the last 10 years. Like the last 15 years. I think the guy is reaching deep into the of where the paper edits. Courtney could probably talk about some of the edits, the way that scripts were edited. But that wasn't really from documentary, but it used to be all back in paper.
Back in paper, stenographers, or Mike, you want something you want to say, or you want to talk, Mike? I'm going to shut up.
Yeah, I just want to say your software looks amazing. I went to your website. I just watched your little sizzle reel, which I would encourage us all to watch if you get a chance. Unbelievable. Like, I thought I was really cute years ago when I was doing these little 5 to 10 minute mini docs up here, and I would literally use Siri against a monitor to transcribe my interviews. And I thought that I was being really, really clever doing that. This is just amazing. Years ago with paper cuts and, a producer would give you a 7-hour timeline to whack down to 43 minutes for broadcast. I mean, this would have been so helpful. Bravo, guys. This looks amazing.
So talk about the paper edits. So just people understand what this used to look like, because this is the evolution of that, right? And this is the Uber version of this. The paper edits used to be, literally a transcription. You literally have paper, and people would highlight those things and send them back to you, and then you'd have to search through them. And if you were lucky, you had time code, and all those things were. It was just this. I literally think this might be 100 times faster.
Easily.
I can tell you from experience, it's probably at least 10 times faster than what I was doing only a couple years ago.
Yeah, because
but-
watching a window burn, even if you understand time code well, you just get so zoned out after a while that you start missing, is that frames or seconds, and your numbers don't come out right. And so the editor's going to find something that doesn't exist, and you're just wasting so much time. It was insane.
And the thing is oh, go ahead.
I was just going to share a story. A few years ago, I was working on a movie whose name rhymes with Ego. And we had 5 actors in a room on microphones, and it was an Avid show. And we would get just a string of the dialogue from this room, and they were all riffing off the cuff, totally off script. And it took a small army days to go through and transcribe and mark up all the stuff on the Avid, which is just so the editors could, I was an assistant on the show, could go through and find the stuff using the Avid's extraordinary search tools. And so it was literally days. And at that point, I did some testing with AI transcription that turned those days pretty much 1-to-1 into hours. So if it would take 4 days, it would take 4 hours to do. And it just kept getting better and better. This was about 3 or 4 years ago, and right around the time Shamir and I started chatting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Next question.
Marty Adius of Silver Springs, Maryland. Do the finished clips get imported back to the host NLE as different clips?
Separate clips? Marty's in the panel. What do you, can you expound on that question?
Yeah, so you're bringing clips in and putting them to the bin on the left, and then as you're selecting text, you're cutting them down, putting them in the timeline on the right. Mm-hmm. And when you go to export it back to your NLE, are they modifying the original clips and creating new clips out of it, or how does that work?
Yeah, so when you're exporting out of Simon Says Assemble and going into, say, your NLE, it is creating a timeline or sequence, referencing those clips that are in your bin, the original clips, and then but like marking them at the in and out points. So basically creating a sub clip and a sequence of sub clips that match the timeline in Simon Says Assemble.
Not making any new media at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just your in and out points, which is great because then you're also, because they're not raw, you can sit there and, the editor now can do the fine editing of how am I going to get from one to the other, exactly what frame are we going to use, and so on and so forth, and all that original data is still there.
Exactly.
Next question.
Next question comes from Ranjan Chandil in Los Angeles, or Shandil. Is the assembly rough cut available to many producers and execs at the same time after the rough is created? Does each assembly get a unique link?
So right now, so I think the last part of that question was about versioning potentially, but yes, this is like a Google Doc. Whoever you invite can jump in, can start adding comments, can start viewing. If they have the rights to edit, they can edit as well. It's like a Google Doc. Multiple people, multiple collaborators can be in this at the same time, commenting, reviewing. And soon we will add versioning where you could be able to save different versions, be able to compare different versions. And
I just want to point out how powerful that is, as someone who's had to do this, because what you normally get into is one person, the coordinator or the assistant to the whoever has to do it goes through the first one, and then you go through the edit as an editor. You cut the whole thing based on that. Then you hand it back, and then someone else does another edit, her, or he, his, supervisor will do that next one, and then you have then you as an editor do it again, and then and all of those things. No one's making any graphics. They're not doing any fine edits. They're just they're just arguing about who said what, when, where to put it. And so this allows you to leave all of that over on the client side. Let them, without any technical understanding at all of how this all works, just grab the text that they want and look at how it feels and make a decision about it, and then they send it back to you, and you're, that's like 2 or 3 revs of time, which saves them money. It's, it saves them money because they're not paying you per hour, but it's none of the work that we really want to do.
Absolutely. I think you actually got to like the kind of core driving force, which is we really wanted to eliminate rounds of feedback. And then implementing those like feedback, those notes. We were like, rest in peace, this feedback loop and this over and over, and especially in a kind of mundane, tedious aspect of the story creation, the not fun part. And how can you do that in a way which you're totally reducing the time barriers, the cost barriers, and like you said, the technical barriers. The client, other people, other departments, they don't need to know anything about how to use Premiere or Avid. It's literally like a word processor, a Google Doc, copy and paste text, drag and drop. That's it. That's the extent of the technical knowledge needed to be able to dynamically create a video.
And the thing is that unless you are Ken Burns or you are working on an Apple project, where there's unlimited budget to do what you want to do, you're not going to get, you're never going to get your documentary or your corporate piece done. You're just going to run out of time. Like you're never going to finish it. It's just going to be like, how much time and budget did you have to get as far as you got? So the faster you can get through those turns, the more you can, the cleaner and the more refined that experience can be for the overall viewer.
Totally. But even like for Ken Burns, I mean, is everyone working in the same office these days? That was the other thing that we're hearing a lot was teams, especially in post-production, don't need to necessarily, if they don't have to be physically in the same office. And a tool like this, which is cloud-based, collaborative on the web, can support distributed teams, whether in the same city or across the country.
Yeah, I think just to add into that, I mean, I'm working remotely right now. I'm sure many of us are. And the schedule kind of goes out the window where I was up last night. I took a break for a couple hours and then I was on my computer at 10:30. And that applies to whomever across the world that happens to jump on whenever they have a minute to do it. And Shamir, one pitch of an idea, let's add video conferencing between users who are on to the interface. That would be pretty sweet.
Next question.
Courtney from here in the panel. What's the
as long as Mike, you're building that.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not putting that on me to like design it.
Courtney wants to know the granularity of the text to clip. Are the timecode ins and outs to the nearest word, or what's the resolution essentially?
Sorry, can you ask that question again? It was I can tell you, like, I didn't understand the full question, but the part that I did hear was we are doing it on a frame basis. But what was the full question?
He just said, what is the granularity of the text to clip? Are the timecode ins and outs that come out of this to the nearest word, or how accurate are they to timecode?
Yeah, so it depends actually on the NLE and their standard of what they support. Is the right answer, but on our system it is to the nearest frame.
Well, that's very granular. I'm just if it's to the nearest frame, the word spans multiple frames often.
Words have time codes in and out, basically. Each word time code in and out.
Is it using the IO to figure out, or AI to figure out the gap that it should cut? So it's like, okay, I wait for that word to end. I'm do an intelligent cut before the next one starts talking as best it can.
Yeah, but see, the focus here is you're just picking the words.
Right.
Because each word has a in and out point. So you would just like pick a sentence. It would take the in point of the first word and then the out time of the last word. Right. So our hope is like, let's eliminate even like anyone thinking about time code at this point. You just like find the key sound bites. Just find the key words, the key sentence, even grab a few extra. You can always extend it or reduce it in post. I mean, you're just grabbing the clip. And so, take a few more words, take an extra sentence.
It's not considering timing at all, which I think is your question, Alex, where it's not a timing tool. So you're not saying, oh, let's give that a beat before she says whatever.
That's what you do in the edit.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Mike?
So can the AI actually tell you if it's going to be an upcut? If a soundbite is going to be like too tight for you to drop in and Frankenbite it, you know what I'm saying?
That's not the kind of focus here. No, the focus is on, and the AI is not involved in this part. The AI is involved in two aspects. One is on the transcription of your dailies, and also if you need to translate them. But on this side, it's not AI. You just like focused on just finding the words, getting to that assembly or edit or paper cut. And then in your NLE, you'll focus on pacing or timings.
Next question.
George Kennedy from here in the panel in Washington, D.C. What's the possibility of bringing Simon Says to a live streaming environment?
Wow. So why don't you tell me how you're envisioning that?
Yep. George, what's the question there?
So obviously, right now you have to bring in a transcriber to be able to get transcription on screen. So I'm wondering, there's like web captioner right now. A lot of folks are using also. So just being able to bring transcript into a live stream, is that a possibility down the road?
So live captioning basically for live stream. Is that right? Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. It does definitely come up. It hasn't been our core focus. I think that the tools right now to do that aren't very good. And so I know the root of that question, but I can't see us focusing on that part. And I'll tell you why. To do that is to do that really well, because you are doing something live. It can't go down. There's no margin, the infrastructure to do that and to do that incredibly well. So there's no failure, close to zero failure, is a full company, dedicated company solving that problem alone, 100% focus of the company. And so for us, most of our users are on this side. They're making videos, they're cutting film, they're making docs, they're doing reality. So it does come up once in a while, but it isn't our focus. So I can't see us doing that.
All right.
Thanks.
Next question.
Moving on, Courtney's back with another one. How does it handle multi-camera shoots where 2 or 3 different clips sync up to the same audio or text? How do you select which clip to use? Wide, a close-up, or an over-the-shoulder, for example?
So right now what we're doing is we're taking the top layer. So if you think about it in Final Cut Pro and there's stacks of layers, we're just using the top layer as the proxy. When you export back to FCP, then you have the different angles to choose from. So the XML still references the multicam in the timeline, and now you would pick which angle to shoot from. So this is just you compiling the key sound bites, ordering those sound bites.
And so in Final Cut,
lock source.
In Final Cut, you would build a multicam clip and drop it into the timeline, and then you would send that out to Simon Says, and it would just grab whatever's in the front. But you could always go back in that multicam and switch angles.
Exactly. Yeah. So you create a multicam.
Or drag it in as a clip, Alex. I think Final Cut or
right
from Final Cut. Simon Says will take pretty much whatever you throw at it.
Exactly.
Right. That's great. Next question.
Alex Johnson is up next with, does it handle multiple speakers? Can it understand the interviewer and the subject and multiple subjects and so forth?
Absolutely. So it's called speaker diarization or speaker identification. What you do in Simon Says is you tag the first speaker. So in a 2-person interview, you tag the interviewer, John, or interviewee as Mary, and it would cascade down in the transcript. So each row is assigned to a speaker, and then it would go through its matching. And right now, how it works is the accuracy is better when 2 people have their own mics. So each person has their own mics.
Next question.
Ranjan Shandil wants to know how timecode is handled. I imagine if you're assembling these bytes from this, what does it do with timecode in terms of passing it through?
We preserve that. We preserve that all the way from ingest, and not just timecode, all sorts of frame rate, file path, file name, all that metadata is passed from ingest through to export. So even before assemble, we were already doing that. Alex, you mentioned the round trip from Final Cut Pro extension back, where it adds ranges, transcript, range markers back to the clips. We were already preserving the frame rate, the FPS, the start time code, and matching that with assemble. It's the same thing.
Just to add one thing onto that, we did discover that there are certain formats that don't carry time code within the file. And so Simon Says allows you to add frame rate and a time code if you happen to be using one of those formats.
Yeah, like MP4. MP4 doesn't have time code.
Next question. Okay, good, Mike. You can jump in.
Yeah, so real quick, I'm trying to figure out in my mind, like, when does the audio sync happen if you're using multiple audio sources? And then also, when do you do the actual multicam, before or after using your software? Does that make sense?
I would say before. I would say do all your prep in whatever your NLE is, and then use those clips to send to Simon Says. That otherwise, what would it link back to? It would link back to the original audio, and depending on what software you're using, things would get buried and your markers or whatever wouldn't be available. So, prep first, then transcribe.
But when does the multicam process, like in Final Cut Pro, actually happen? Before or after using your software?
Before, and that I would consider that prep. So, and when you're syncing, you can take the opportunity. The way I like to do it, if have separate audio, first make a sync clip, then make multicams from the sync clip. That way you can ensure that every sync clip has been, fiddle around for the most precise sync you can stand, because timecode sync is only as good as the jam that supports it. And more often than not, there's a delay in there of some kind.
That was a great saying. For some reason, you think sync is only as good as the jam, man. Anyway, so go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, you guys are fairly Mac-centric, and this panel is fairly Mac-centric. I'm kind of the oddball because I'm still PC, but I plan on getting a Mac Mini. Do you guys plan on getting that to more parity between the PC and Mac platforms?
We're web-based. So Simon Says Assemble is web-based. It works across all platforms, even our extensions. So right now the Resolve extension is for Macs. We are building it for Windows. The Adobe Premiere extension works on Adobe Premiere for Windows and Linux as well. So, for us, this new product is all permissionless web-based. It's hard building on for platform specific, your team, your client, maybe on numerous different types of operating systems. The web is the best way for us to have achieved this.
Yeah,
so,
it was the Resolve. It was the Resolve plugin.
Got it. Yeah, and that yes, absolutely. Yeah, I was surprised how many. I think even for me, it's been an interesting evolution over the last couple of years. So I started on Final Cut 7. Went to Adobe Premiere. That whole story. For me, it's been really interesting. Like I hadn't had much exposure personally as a storyteller to Resolve, but the number of people asking when Simon Says going to support Resolve for the last couple of years has been really interesting and intriguing to me to hear that. And it just kept growing more and more and more frequently. And so that's how our initiative to build a Simon Says extension for Resolve. Now Resolve's external API functionality isn't very good. You need a helper application. And so since we already had the Mac app because of our integration with Final Cut Pro, that's why it was the easiest route to be able to support Resolve as soon as possible. And so supporting the Macs was the easiest step. Your question, the number of people asking, hey, when are we going to have support for Windows? We've now started that. So we will have support for Resolve for Windows. We're working on it. Again, a lot of it is the challenges. So there's even a difference between free Resolve and paid Resolve. Paid Resolve has Studio has much better external application support versus the free one, but we want to be able to support both if possible. But yes, we're working on that, and hopefully we'll have some news in the next couple months.
Next question.
Moving on to Mickey from the Philippines here in the panel. What's the workflow like when working with scripted content? For example, multiple shots and takes with the same dialogue. And he has a note here. He think corporate video with a mixture of interviews and scripted parts.
Well, it seems like you can still build the edit. I mean, if you have the audio.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're going through the trouble to transcribe your dailies, which that's the first step, and it all sort of starts with that motivation where, if you have multiple takes, transcribe your dailies. Like another way to use this would be to answer the inevitable question, can we see all the takes of that line? And so if you put, scene 12, and you go through and take every single take of the lines and just line them up in one sequence, then you can just play that. And instead of tying up your NLE, marking favorites and building string outs and stuff like that. So I could see the tool being used in that way. And go ahead, Junie. I would say you kind of have to work it out with whatever your particular situation is, but it starts with, do you want to transcribe? And if you want to transcribe, then how can you use it to make it work for you? That's one thing. That's the first thing that came to mind for me, is to of the lines just build out so somebody can make a choice if there is significant choice to be made.
Go ahead, Mike.
So it actually just dawned on me. Yeah, I've worked with producers where they were certain that a certain soundbite was said. And I was like, no, I can assure you it hasn't been said. And now I could actually turn the entire thing over to them and say, look at it for yourself. You search for it. I'm telling you, it's not there. Because there have been times where like they don't believe you as an editor that, you know, that soundbite never happened.
It was a rehearsal. That's why they don't. That's why you don't have it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Next question.
Moving on, Mark Harder of Brooklyn says, audio files only to Pro Tools in the future?
Where your
Microphone, Shamir.
Yeah, you're muted.
Sorry, I was going to say yes. We support that. We're going to do we're doing an AAF export, which ingests into Pro Tools. So yes.
Next question.
Moving on to Alex Johnson. Do the notes column from the website come over to the editor?
It will. So it does to Word as of today, where if you're exporting the shot, the kind of timeline edit, it comes as comments in Word. And yes, they will be a marker in your edit. But again, very specific to the NLE.
That's great. Because that means that while they're doing all of that, they can say, oh, by the way, let's insert this graphic. Or I mean,
exactly.
Again, starting to take soft steps towards Frame.io, that you'd be able to add a lot of the markers and notes and edit notes into it in that first pass. It's great.
Yeah.
Something that I actually just 5 minutes before we jumped on here, I suggested to Shamir that if I'm thinking about Final Cut, because that's where I work a lot, but if all of the pieces that are built into an assemble would come back as favorites in the dailies and build a sequence, or have the option for users to add a keyword at some point on that, which seems like a reasonable request, Shamir.
Yeah, as long as my answer to you is always, as long as you're building that, Mike. The first, I don't know if you guys know how Mike and I first met. Like he was searching and like he found us because we support Final Cut Pro. And his first email to me is like, this guy out of nowhere, don't even know who he is. Apparently he's well known in the community and has this long list in an email of like 15 things we should add to Simon Says. And I got on the phone. I was like, who is this guy? And then he just had another 10 points. And I was like, why don't you just come work with me on this and you build it, all the features that you want. So that's how Mike and I started working together.
And how Mike and I work together is Mike got me into Simon Says, and then I sent him the list, and then he sends to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Next question.
Moving on, Laura Seal, friend here from Greensboro. We see in video depositions a lot that it's not just what someone says, it's how they say it. Is there a workflow for accommodating client notes on body language, facial expression, eyeline interruptions, pauses, background noises? Or how does the editor handle those pre and post in Simon Says review of material?
I mean, a lot of ways that could be the notes too, right?
That's an interesting question. I think we've talked about this before, and it's just, I think what the question is can you add gaps of stuff? Can you put things in between, like two pieces of media? And that's an interesting question.
Yeah. And that's coming.
I think,
that's going to be basically.
I could see it as like, if you add your own thing, maybe it just comes back as a title or something like that. So I don't know, but that seems like a good point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, the question was around like being able to comment, like you mentioned, Alex. I think that's what it was. And yes, you can definitely do it in that workflow. But in terms of adding gaps, absolutely, that's on the feature kind of list of like being able to add like a half second or 1 second or 5 second gap in between clips. Maybe you leave it as a title card, like,
It'd be great for us to see poster frame of add, insert something like as a client, if they had a couple poster boards of like insert graphic here, insert this here. And especially if it was like a meme thing where you could just like, they could create a pad and just type something real quick in and just have it just pop up. Like, I want that. And then they can have a whole template of all these little pictures. I'm sorry.
Little skeuomorphic yellow sticky note.
All right. Next question.
Okay, moving on to Frank Haney of Ottawa. How does the relationship between translation and captioning work? Do the captions end up displaying in the requested translated language?
Yes. So The flow right now, so that's out of Simon Says Assemble. That's a Simon's core product. How you would do it is you need to do the pass with the speech recognition. So you need to transcribe in the original language. So turn the audio into text. So you do the transcription. Then once you have the transcript, you make any edits, and then you hit export and you translate it to the desired languages. You can do a number of languages at the same time. We support 100 languages. Then once you have that, then you can go into the visual subtitle editor where you get to preview the subtitles and captions there. So if you want to like have a break at a different point, we let you choose to be compliant with like CA 608 and 708. The default is 32 characters per line, 2 lines per subtitle card. But you can choose to have more characters per line or less number of lines, whatever you'd like. And then you can export out to, a number of subtitle and caption formats like SRT, WebVTT. You also support FCP XML captions, FCP XML titles.
Next question.
Guy Cochran is imagining being in the field with the director of photography acquiring hours of 6K B-RAW in the field abroad. What would the transcode process in the field be like for them to upload? Can they just do a compressor to MPEG-4 320 by 240 for efficiency? What should they do?
Yeah, absolutely. But do it in MOV format because MP4 doesn't have time code. So to preserve the start time code, keep it in MOV, but yes, do that and then ingest it into Simon Says. You can use the Mac app if you're on a Mac, or just upload it to the web, or if you're in your NLE.
And just to ask a question on that question is, would it recognize that seems like something you would definitely have to relink. So would it be a file naming consideration because the frame size would be different?
So in Simon Says, when you export out, you can set the resolution. So the timeline is now at at the resolution you desire, but yes, then you would have to relink the media.
That would be worth testing because what I would be concerned about is if it's looking for an original clip that is whatever size, 6K as you said, then is it going to find? Are you going to be able to relink those things back in your NLE when the time comes?
Yeah.
Mickey?
Yeah, I wonder, like, for this workflow where you have really heavy footage, would it be a possibility, maybe not, maybe now, maybe not, maybe in the future, to upload the production sound files ahead of time, get those transcribed, and you can start on the paper edit, and in the future, upload a lower quality video file that has the same time code, and then have that relink in the same project. So you can start on the paper edit with just the sound and then see the videos later on after you have created the smaller proxies.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I'm just going to say that's a recipe for disaster for many reasons. Sound time code is not going to be the same as picture time code. It's going to start before, it's going to end after. It might be continuously running when things are happening. I mean, it seems like it would be extremely challenging for the end user to make the technology work for them in that way. That's just my first impression of that question, is because too many variables, and once you sync your clips and some of the sound is gone, I could just see it being an issue.
Good, Bill. We're going to keep moving because I actually have a 9 o'clock a hard out. So
okay.
So let's go into the next question.
Moving on, Ranjan Chandil, Los Angeles. How does this compare to script sync on Avid? Advantages and limitations.
Script sync on Avid is a completely different thing. You spend days like going through footage and stopping and dragging markers and diamonds. It's a completely different thing.
There you go. Next question.
And Ranjan is back with, I want to make this a permanent part of all future workflows. What team would I use to standardize it on workflows? What term would I use to standardize it on workflows for post?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Looking for a verb, you're going to Simon Says-ize it? Or
oh, right. Yeah, so
I said Simonize already.
When you're talking to your producer of like, and then we're going to Simonize it.
But that's a whole different thing.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like,
Simon Says it. Just Simon Says it. Come on.
We're going to Simon. I like Simonize.
Isn't that
it's already been
car
used.
wax? Yeah.
It's car wax, but it's It's such a good
Smooths the
name.
process
Anyway,
of editing.
Most people don't even remember Simon Eyes. Go ahead, Stuart.
Simon says there's questions from the audience that we might have missed out on because we're running out on time. Can we invite our guests to the after show?
We sure can. If you guys want to, there's no pressure, but there's we are about to close this show and start a new one. Let me put the hold on. Let me for those of you who want to keep going. Let's see here. Let me.
I unfortunately have a hard stop at 9, but
Yeah.
Mike, if you're free, definitely.
And it's totally up to you guys. We'll just talk amongst ourselves. So there's no. I promised these guys it would be 8 to 9. So they all have
I got a
busy
couple
schedules.
minutes, but I do have kids to get to school. But learning is just not that important.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't want to overdo our stay here, but somehow I closed my Mukana.
But thank you, Stuart.
Yeah, but we'll warn people next time that this exists. There's a link for anyone in Makana that wants to jump into the post show. Guys, thank you so much, Mike, Shamir. It was such a pleasure to have you. Really, really great. I was really excited about the idea that we'd have a show that was video oriented the day after the embargo opened or closed. So I hope this was hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, thank you
fun.
so much. It's super. Yeah, it was great and great questions. And you know how this goes. We want all feedback, but pass it to Mike and tell Mike that he has to implement it, not to pass it to me. So
thank you so much. This is our kind of, yeah, absolutely. And we'll see you guys soon.